Well, welcome back. Glad to have you. Glad to be going through the book of Hebrews with you. I hope you're finding it rewarding, encouraging, edifying, and equipping, which is the mission of my ministry, Theo Faith. Also wanted to just take a moment to thank you for those of you who support the ministry, not only prayerfully, but also financially. You know, there's expenses associated with the ministry. There's expenses for internet hosting and just the technology that's necessary, the software and things to record these. So I appreciate you contributing and defraying those costs financially. It's an encouragement to me. The Bible says that we're supposed to give materially where we're being blessed spiritually. So your material blessings to me communicate to me that these are being spiritually useful to you. So thank you for that. And it's been a long time since I've thanked you, so forgive my neglect. To go on, though, today we're going to be in Hebrews chapter 3, verses 3 through 6. Last time we looked at the comparison, what's similar between Moses and Jesus. This time we're going to be looking at what's different. So let's take a look at those verses together. Verses 3 through 6. Let's just walk through this. Verse 3, for he has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses, by just so much as the builder of the house has more honor than the house. What's he saying here? Well, he's saying in verse 3 that Jesus was the builder of the house. Now, I put my notes here, house in quotation marks, because he's using it as a metaphor, just as it was used in 2 Samuel 7 as a metaphor for the kingdom that God was building. Remember, he told David that David was going to have a ruler over his house. Now, he didn't mean just David's home. He meant over the house that is Israel. So Jesus is the builder of that kingdom, the builder of that house, and deserves more glory as the head of the house. Think about how much credit the leader of a nation deserves rather than the people who work for him. He sets the direction and he sets the pace in so many ways. Jesus is doing that. He is the builder of the house. So he has counted more glory than Moses, because Jesus is the builder of the house. And in verse 4 and 5, it says, for every house is built by someone. The builder of all things is God. Now Moses was faithful in all God's house as a servant for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken later. So Moses was a faithful servant in God's house. Jesus, on the other hand, in verse 6, is a faithful son. So Moses has a place, he has a role, he has an important role in an important place, but Jesus is again preeminent. This does not mean that Moses is useless or that Moses should be disregarded in some way or now he can be ignored. We're going to see that's far from the case. What we're learning here is Jesus was different from Moses. He was the builder of the house that Moses was serving in. And Jesus, in verse 6, was faithful. Faithful as a son over his house. That's interesting he should say that. Son, as we learned before, really means that he is God's filial, I guess we can say, representative. He is all God is. He has the very DNA, we can say, of God, as a son has the DNA of the parents. And as we learn from John chapter 5, verses, I think 27, that the claim to be the Son of God is tantamount to claiming to be God himself. So Jesus is that builder. Moses is faithful in that building. The house being built was the nation. Moses was a member of that nation. not its builder. The builder naturally has more honor. That's the flow of the argument here. We get to verses 4 and 5. I think we're caught up short, or we maybe stop and scratch our head when it says the builder of all things is God, because he just told us that Jesus is the builder. So I think this is a clear statement of Jesus's divinity, that Jesus is preeminent over Moses, because another fact, Jesus is God. I want you to also notice in verse 5 that Moses was faithful in all God's house as a servant. Note this, the reason, for a testimony of those things which would be spoken later. What are those things? Well, things about the kingdom, things about the coming millennial kingdom of Jesus. That Moses' life was a testimony of those things that were still coming. In other words, Moses lived in light of the coming of the Messiah. He knew his place. He knew he was pointing forward to the coming of the Messiah. And Moses was that testimony in his life of what was coming. Verse 6, it says, Christ was faithful as a son over his house, whose house we are if we hold firmly to the confidence and the boasting of our hope. So what he's saying here is Jesus is that faithful son. As again, John 5:18 says, he is that son like the Father. And we are members. He's speaking immediately to the Hebrews who have believed. These are the true remnant. That's who he's speaking to here. Remember, one of the groups that he's speaking to are people here who need encouragement to go on. They're true believers, but like all of us, they need encouragement to go on. There's a group in there that are on the edge. Maybe they haven't made a commitment to Jesus as Messiah at this point, but they're close, so they need another reason perhaps. This is it. And those who are resistant, digging in their heels. So what he's speaking to here are those Hebrews who believe. They are the true and faithful remnant of Israel, as Romans 9:8 says. Extended reference is to us, to all who share the faith of the Hebrew remnant. All of us who have that same faith, we have the confidence and the boast of our hope. In other words, we too hope in the soon coming of Jesus. So how do we apply this? Well, let's first of all think about the original readers here. As these Hebrews follow Moses' example and look forward to the coming of the Messiah, so they also will remain in fellowship with Christ and the house that is being built. That's why he tells them, remember, to consider, to put your mind on, to meditate on Jesus. So too, likewise, we're going to maintain fellowship with Christ and his body if we continue to live in light of his coming. And part of living in light of his coming is to keep our minds on him, to consider him, to meditate on him. So let's resolve, brothers and sisters, let's resolve to finish and live afresh in the light of Jesus' coming. Let's reaffirm our commitment to do that. Let's reaffirm to look forward, not so much to things getting better on the earth, which they won't, but let's look forward to his rapture of the church and his coming kingdom. It's imminent, the Bible says. It could happen at any moment. And of course, it's closer now than it ever has been. So let's live, really live like we could be raptured before the end of this video, before the end of the day, or before the next video comes out. Let's just live and resolve to live in that way, to live in light of his coming and to be in fellowship with him when he returns. So God bless you, and we'll be pressing on into this next big section, which begins, let me look at my notes here, begins in chapter 3, verse 7, and goes through chapter 4, verse 13, another encouragement for us. So God bless you.